He loses his virginity when he's in college.
It's not normal.
He didn't lose his virginity until he was in college.
I'm sorry, being anally by your adult family member is losing your virginity.
Okay.
Being anally by your adult family member is not normal childhood sexual experience.
I'm sorry.
Obviously, I'm a person of color.
I don't agree that you need to
and
see
that's
yourself.
okay.
But you're an able-bodied white man. It's easy for you to say that, though, as a white man. If I am an African-American mother of a young gay man, I don't have a problem with him reading this book.
Oh, my God.
Don't get me wrong.
But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this video is going to be special. It's a little wild. It's a debate between moms of liberty and other peoples on the other side that thinks the way we handle things at school or race might not be the best for certain protective class.
Give us some examples of some of the things that you saw happening at Brearley that you thought that prompted you to speak up about this.
I looked at the curriculum of what the curriculum looked like in the last year before the George Floyd summer in 2019 to 20 and what it looked like today, or the most recent one I had. And it's dramatically different. He looked at 10th grade, which was American history and American literature. The books they're reading are completely different. They've gotten rid of most of Mark Twain and F. Scott Fitzgerald and replaced it with sort of the identity politics-oriented multicultural books.
Well, like what? I mean, is it just writers who aren't white, or what books?
Well, right. I don't remember the names off the top of my head. It was a little while ago. But it's oppression-oriented ideology. These are not the books of great literature anymore. What it had been. You know, the history curriculum, if you looked at American history, 10th grade, American history, in 2019-20, the curriculum says, you know, looking at the founding of America, using source documents, etc. If you look at it, what it says now, it's looking at the foundings of America through the lens of anti-racist ideology or something like that. It's completely different.
And what was the demographic makeup of your school?
You know, it was what I'll call optically diverse. You know, it's, I mean, they focus an enormous amount on, you know, diversity, probably what they'll call 40% people of color, if I'm guessing, something of that. Probably more now than it was then, something like that. That's my guess.
So my question is for everyone, I guess two questions. One is what Andrew is talking about, something that the rest of you have seen in other schools, and is what Andrew is talking about something that is positive as opposed to insidious? Iman, you've taken a whole bunch of notes. What do you want to share with the class?
Oh, so interesting. I'm trying to listen to everyone's point of view. Obviously, I'm a person of color.
And you made it immediately about race.
So this kind of hits home for me, of course. Thinking about the anti-racist ideology, I don't think anyone should be forced into signing a pledge of anything that they have to teach at home. I absolutely do not believe that. But I definitely understand why a conversation has to be had about having a more inclusive and holistic education system. Families should all have input on that, absolutely. I think that we should have a plethora of different, who are the authors of the books that we're reading. We should have a canon that is progressive and inclusive. That's the world that we live in today. Not taking away from Mark Twain, not taking away from any of the amazing historical canon that we've read. Shakespeare, I loved Shakespeare. Please don't ever stop teaching Shakespeare in schools. But I also really, really love some amazing authors that have come around today that look a little bit more like me. I can't have my child in a school where he cannot see himself in that. Or I walk into a classroom and there's not one book that has an author that is black.
Can I say, what you just described is exactly what happened at our daughter's school.
Inclusion?
Meaning what?
Meaning a focus on those things. Diversity.
That's horrible.
Yes, it is horrible. And she is fighting for racism. You're not supposed to look at the content of the people, but you only have to look at the skin of the people. Maybe you're motivating people to copy the skin color and not the brain color. I understand their point, but the delivery is so unique that they can't even comprehend how negatively it can affect people, because they believe talking about racism in such a way can never be negative.
Diversity.
That's horrible.
It is. But now we're talking
sarcasm.
ideologically.
Yeah.
Okay, but I just want to say, I want to let others, but so, and I understand where you're coming from, obviously, having kind of spent the last 3.5 years trying to understand what you just said, where it came from. And I understand how most people view these words, diversity, inclusion, equity, obviously DEI, which we've all become so familiar with, as good words, because in the colloquial meaning of the words. They mostly, equity we can talk about, but diversity and inclusion are good things. But there is an ideology behind them that, again, is very, very different.
But you're an able-bodied white man.
Are you arguing against the inclusion of non-white, non-male authors in schools? I mean, which part of this
I'm arguing
feels like...
against the books of the great books, which mostly were written by white males. I'm not, and not all of them. Not all of them.
That's interesting. I think that those books, and I'm sorry.
Because if you have an unlimited, if you have an infinite amount of time in English class, read, this is where we run into trouble. Read everything. Same
Those
with
books
history
have been
class.
elevated.
Learn everything.
Those books have been elevated, though. It's not that those.
But they're
it's
not
not
as
that
good.
That's
They're
not.
not as good, and they have an ideology baked into most of what
That's a
they're
very
reading.
interesting concept. They're not as good because you haven't read them. I have read them.
No, they're not as good as works of literature.
If we don't know
And they
that
don't
they
bring
exist,
this
is a luxury
There's a
to know.
divisiveness to this that I don't agree that you need to
and
see
that's
yourself.
okay. Like,
I don't agree that my kid needs to
It's
see
easy for you to say that, though, as a white man.
and
Well, I
that's
have a
okay.
daughter.
That doesn't
I don't
matter.
care if she
But we're not talking about your
doesn't care
daughter.
Do you
if
not
she
want
reads
her to
women.
see
No,
herself?
I'm not saying I don't want.
Okay.
I'm saying focus on good education.
Okay.
And now we're getting to the, we're now getting to a much deeper level
Why
of
would you
what is
assume,
education.
Why would you assume something written by a woman or a person
No,
of
I'm not.
color?
He didn't say that. He says if we're going to talk about all the colors, let's focus on the color, not dark blue, light blue, green blue. And then over time, the education level doesn't go up. You just broaden the experience. And it can never be solved because whenever you say it's because of racism, nobody tries to solve the issue. They try to solve a racism that isn't really there. It's only in your head.
If you go on the internet and Google, or maybe 10 years ago, the greatest works of literature,
And
the
that was determined
overwhelming
by...
majority are going to be written by white men. Now, maybe because women couldn't write back, it doesn't matter. The
Only
point of-
17% of black children in America are reading on grade level in fourth grade. That's according to the National
Maybe
Assessment
if they
for
read
Educational
more
Progress
literature
that
and our
looked like
nation's
that,
report
Look
card.
like that. They'd be
Did you see that? Thank you, Liberty Mom. Because that's the point. You focus on so many other things that you never get things done. You read this book, it makes you intelligent. But then for some odd reason, the reading classes is going down. You need to challenge that. There's so many good black authors out there. Like Thomas Sowell, maybe I'm butchering his name, but I love this guy. The way he explains stuff. I don't even know if he's left-leaning or right-leaning. But it doesn't feel like he's pushing an ideology. He just speaks in a way that I'm like, that actually makes sense. But if he was actually in such a debate, they would actually call him racist. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still here, I hope I gain your subscription today. Like the video, comment. Let me know what you guys think about the whole situation.
We're in Florida, newly famous for the so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill. So we can get into this now.
That's
all right. So this is fun, yeah. So this so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill bans instruction.
But can we call it what its title was? It was the Parental Rights and Education.
So the Parental Rights and Education Act bans instruction in gender identity and sexual orientation in grades pre-K through 8 and then 9 through 12, I think. You can talk about it a little in high school or something like that. I thought that we'd start by looking at a piece of material that I think epitomizes what the people who support this ban are afraid of. And this is a book that has been part of the curriculum in Seattle public schools. It was recommended to school children in New York City public schools, and it's been recommended by the Human Rights Campaign for use in elementary school classrooms. So this isn't just like a random thing. This is an actual book that is part of curricula.
I Am Jazz.
This is I Am Jazz, an autobiographical picture book by Jazz Jennings, a transgender activist who began her transition when she was 5 years old.
I'm going to explain my objection because we just had a school shooting in Georgia.
Thank you.
And the school shooter ostensibly attacked that school because he didn't feel trans rights were being respected. This is a serious topic.
It is.
What we're teaching our kids about themselves and about who they are. But it has gotten to the point now where we've had 2 school shootings over an ideology and an indoctrination of our kids into thinking there's something wrong with them.
They were born in the wrong body.
But who's making them feel that way?
Where children are being told in public school
telling them-
classrooms that they were born
We're
with
telling them.
homosexuals. Do you know that Jazz, a little boy, had his penis split open and inverted, sterilized, never have an orgasm, has to stick a dilator in to keep an open wound open? This is a child. When I was 12 years old, I didn't know that I wanted to be a mom. If you had said to me, when I got my period, I have yet to meet a young girl who loves going through puberty. I didn't know that I'd want to breastfeed my children. And I had to listen to Chloe Cole, a detransitioner, sit on a stage where she said, don't know if I will ever be able to have a baby. And if I have children, I won't be able to breastfeed. And what I say to you, Ben, is this. These gender ideologues are stealing a future from girls that they don't even know that they want.
And
yet.
boys.
These are
And
children.
boys, yeah.
But right now, I'll talk about ROGD and girls, and you're right, boys too.
This is how it's
got
happening,
you.
actually, Ben, is they're coming into media centers and libraries like we're at.
That's right.
And they're bringing adults in to read this material, and these young children are believing what's read because it's in a book.
They also believe in Santa, just to be clear.
Before this book was read, did we have trans people in the
There's
world?
no such thing as a transgender
Before
child.
this book was read, did we have gay people?
Yes.
There's no such thing as a transgender child.
So in my mind, I do know
And
that.
I think they're actually trans
I'm
people.
just
Anyway,
curious.
the majority of young
Would it
people
exist if we didn't read
There was
boys.
transsexual. They changed it to transgender.
I mean,
that's part of the whole ideology. No, they're different
Right,
things.
right. Okay, my point
We
is.
got to get to the
okay.
ideology behind
Okay,
this if we really want to discuss it.
Transgender ideology is extremely homophobic. The majority of boys who end up going through transition or pushing a transition, if left alone to go through puberty, would turn out to be gay.
Have you heard this before?
Never.
I'm actually surprised that she said never, but then again, if you detransition, generally, most people don't really care what you're doing. I have even asked people from that community what the heck is happening and why people might detransing, and they said, well, if they detrans, they were never trans. Then I'm like, that's interesting. So if they were not ever and they detrans, maybe somebody convinced them.
What I have heard is that the suicide attempts and the suicide rate for boys who feel like they are,
and I wonder if they
who do not
felt
have the
seen and
support.
heard, it would be
I know, and
different.
I understand transgender. I'm sorry, you are absolutely right. Transgender, where you actually transition. I don't know how comfortable I am with really agreeing with that. But when it comes to a
Can I
child who
explain
feels like they're
transgender?
something else and being able to kind of like wear a dress or wear heels or whatever it is,
But okay,
I'm
but
not going to
Iman,
like.
but this is what's interesting.
Like I
is
don't
that,
have
like,
I'm not even a part of that community for me to really have an opinion on it, to be really quite honest. But for the students who feel like they are,
Well, neither of
they
us,
would
we all
rather-
have opinions.
They would rather die than be, you know what I mean?
And
Because nobody is giving them a place to be seen or to be respected. That to me is a problem as well.
But
I
the
think
data shows
if we're going
now,
to care about all the
which is
students, then
why
we need to care about all the students.
We don't need to be having conversations about surgeries and puberty blockers and whatever. First off, the percentage is very, very low.
Whenever they talk about race, school, Black Lives Matter or whatever, you can challenge it. But the defense is always, what about the T people? And I'm like, okay, let's talk about the T people. Well, I don't know much information about them. I'm like, okay, then why do you keep using the T people as a defense to justify the other thing that you're trying to defend?
Right? Very low. You're talking 1%, maybe. Right?
Skyrocketing. You
And
have
so-
schools in California where they have.
I'm sorry, I was
8%.
right in the middle of a sentence. Thank you. So I think the conversation with the place that school psychologists the role that they play, the role that the larger school family plays, the conversation should be much more centered on how do we support the child and the family as they navigate this very complicated landscape.
What is the message you think that a child who does not conform to gender stereotypes gets from this book?
So you have a child that's experiencing mental distress. First of all, it's being introduced now in kindergarten. These are children who really, and it is being mandated in some states that this is taught.
Actually, is that in your experience? Have you seen this being in kindergarten? Do kids talk about gender?
I think that I'll be really transparent. I think that if a child is already in a classroom that already has this mindset that this is who they are, then of course it's going to come up in conversation between kindergartners. Because the child is coming to school, we're in a public education system, we're going to have different kids that come to school. So
Well,
if
as
your
opposed
kid
to
is
like
in
it
a
being
classroom-
introduced as
I
curriculum.
mean, we are in Florida, man.
Yeah,
So,
that
so
doesn't
no,
happen.
absolutely not.
Right, but it will happen if
Definitely
it-
not.
if
But
it-
by
yeah.
middle school, absolutely, because there's going to be kids there that are trans. I'm so
has
sorry,
no
even the
place
terminology.
in our schools and public education. Our kids aren't even learning how to read. And we're telling them they've been born in the wrong body. There are 2 sexes, 0 genders, and infinite personalities. Telling children there's something wrong with them because they like to play with different toys or like the color pink is abuse.
My son liked pink when he was little, and they dressed him like a princess without our knowledge. We didn't get angry. We just went to our son. We asked him, how was your day? And our son said, I dressed like a king. And we said, yeah. And he was like, yeah. And we never talked about it again. It's just a phase people explore, and it's okay. A feminine boy is okay. A masculine girl is okay. Just don't tell them that is an identity, and if people tell you that identity is not your identity, they're trying to attack you, and we come with empathy to help you be whatever you want. The moment you play it like that, you can just change the brain. If I can make a kid believe in Santa Claus, if I can make a kid believe in Jesus, if I can make a kid believe in no God, everything is possible. My point is, you can make them believe there's something. That's my point.
Just inflammatory, like bright, shiny objects.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Tiffany, I swear.
What? I'm sorry.
Then let me say it for her. No, you're wrong.
Okay.
You're absolutely wrong.
Listen.
Well, where have we seen?
Wait, listen to me.
Sorry.
We have a system that's built on seat time. We've had 50 years of unfunded mandates. We have not added 1 minute to the school day, not 1 day to the school year. Right? Those are the things that we can control.
You didn't add the school day. You just replaced a lot of stuff that you made way more important. That's why a lot of kids can't even count.
We cannot control how somebody views their body. That's not what we can control. What we can control is the policy that surrounds education and how we deliver it to our children.
And we're not
That's
talking
what
about,
we're here to
we're
talk
not talking about controlling how they feel about themselves or how they think.
That's
I
not
don't
what
know.
she's talking about, though.
But she just said that.
No.
She just said it.
She's not talking about controlling the feelings of students.
She said
She's
we cannot
talking
control
about-
the feeling.
We
We're
can't
not
control-
asking.
we can't-
We're
We
not
can
trying to
control
do
what we
that.
spend time on in the classroom, and spending time on I Am Jazz when we only have one
I'm
third of
talking
American
about right
children-
here, sitting
when we
here
only
right
have
now.
one-
We have to move on to this book stuff. So, House Bill 1069, signed into law last year in Florida, among other things, establishes a process for parents to object to any school library book and requires the books be immediately reviewed or immediately removed while these objections are adjudicated. Now, Tiffany, because I know this is something that's been pushed by Moms for Liberty.
No.
Well, then clear this up. Do you think that Florida's law, or the law that I just described, which is Florida's law, is this a good model for the rest of the country?
I think that the biggest concern really has been in Florida and other places that there didn't seem to be a process for school as to how library books, were making their way into the library, how they were being reviewed. And so I sat on a school board for 4 years. Were there books that were in the library that weren't appropriate for public school while I was on the school board? Absolutely. I think that there were books that librarians, in some cases, were shocked to see what the content was in the library books. So I think that, you have curriculum that is adopted in every school district. Parents are involved in as part of that curriculum adoption process, and that parents should absolutely have the ability to look at what the books and the materials that are in the schools, and if they have concerns about them, to go to their local school board, their elected officials, and express their concerns.
Okay, so is this law which says that if a parent objects to a book, that the book is immediately removed while it is reviewed? And I mean, is that do you feel? Do
Yeah,
you
I think there has to be a process that's in place in order for materials to be questioned and the school board to be able to take action on that. And I just want to be clear. The mission of Moms for Liberty is to unify, educate, and empower parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. We're a parental rights organization. The book issue was something that we didn't start, but was actually brought to a lot of our moms and they were made aware of. And I do feel that parents felt they had a moral obligation to take action when they saw the graphic sexual content that was in these books.
Okay, so this bill has resulted in the removal of hundreds of books from library shelves. This includes books by Toni Morrison, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
To be clear, the school boards are the ones that are making the decision about which books are removed.
No. This law says that if a parent objects to a book, it's whisked off the shelves.
The school board is the one that makes the decision, and Ryan was a part.
Ultimately about
Yes.
whether we put the book back on the shelf.
Correct.
Or take it away.
But
Or the superintendent.
I mean, parents are going to ask. Here's the thing. Parents, even on the school board, you spent 24 years. Parents are going to ask a lot of questions. Some of them are going to be, things that you want flagged that you're aware of. Some of the things that parents are going going to bring up, you're going to say either maybe there's nothing I can do about that, or that, you know, this is something that's a policy in our district and we're going to continue doing it. But parents have the right to ask questions about anything that their children are being exposed to in schools, and local school boards are elected. That's why American public education is so beautiful in many ways, because across the world, parents don't have the type of representative government that we do in America. Local control is incredibly important.
Okay, but this law has resulted in the removal of books that I don't think any of us would call pornographic, books by Judy Blume, Jodi Picoult, Margaret Atwood. So my question is for everyone, like, is this law too broad?
I think it's very important to be honest about the fact that when we talk about funding in school library funding, it's minuscule. And that's something that I know that Ryan has spoken about publicly, about the fact that we should be investing in our libraries, in our schools, and we should be investing in literacy specialists to help our children to identify good books that are going to help to enhance their learning. We have standards in American public education. In Florida, we have the best standards. It's a roadmap that shows very clearly what a child should be learning in any given year. And then there's curriculum that's selected in the school that matches to those standards. And so the idea that every book that has ever been written should be in a public school library is just ridiculous. You know, Jodi Picoult, as you spoke about, well, that's a book that you can buy in the grocery store while you're checking out your groceries. Should a book that you buy at the grocery store that's a female romance novel should taxpayer money be spent on that book and put on a library shelf? I think it's a good debate to have.
I don't see anything wrong with parents reviewing the materials that are part of the curriculum.
But it's also what parents.
Yes, she means you people. Conservative, yeah, you.
Keep going.
So it's very selective. It's very selective. I'll give you an example. We had a situation in our district about one particular book, All Boys Aren't Blue. And it's a story about a young African
Who's a boy in the book?
Okay, let's keep going.
He's a minor.
I just said that.
Oh, okay.
African-American boy, well, man, a young boy, it's kind of his coming of age, right? He loses his virginity when he's in college, later in life. He was molested by his cousin when he was younger, I think 12 or something like that.
He was anally by an adult family member.
Okay,
Tiffany,
and this is something...
And this happened.
Not the R word, but you lost your virginity, and when you get angry, I would say, hey man, it happened. I don't think you could justify that. But for some odd reason now, it's suddenly normal, because we need to be careful how we speak about the topic, because it might label too many people, possibly in a bad way.
So keep going.
And so I read the book from cover to cover because we had a school board member that actually filed criminal charges against our superintendent and wanted the superintendent arrested. Ridiculous, right? When I say it's up to certain parents, if I am an African-American mother of a young gay man, I don't have a problem with him reading this book.
Oh my gosh.
Excuse me, molestation happens.
We should do a lot better than throw a library book on the shelf.
And let me tell you something.
Is this not the point
Judy Blume's Forever is raunchier than that book.
Well, Judy Blume's been pulled from shelves
too. I know, right? And we're of that, some of us are of that generation of Judy Blume. But Forever was a pretty naughty book.
I mean, these are books that describe the reality of teenage sexuality, and that is a thing that makes some parents very uncomfortable.
And I'm just saying that if parents want to opt out, right, Tiffany, if you don't want your child to read that book, then we have a process in Florida where the parents can opt out of that book.
Does the parent have to name the books that are not?
Yes.
So
but now, if I'm a parent and I want my child to read that book, I should have a right to let my child read that book.
The way out of this that sort of satisfies people feel very passionately about this on both sides. Could you not have a system where a parent can say, hey, every book that my kid checks out of the library, it has to have my approval?
Why don't we
be sort of the fastest way to sort of resolve this problem and move on?
It's more or less like that.
Would you like me to, may I answer?
Yeah.
Maybe we could just take all of the books that have graphic sexual content. And I'm going to push back on you for a moment because you said this is normal, children having coming of age sexual experiences. It's not normal.
He didn't lose his virginity until he was in college.
I'm sorry, it being anally by your adult family member is losing your virginity.
Okay.
Being anally by your adult family member is not normal childhood sexual
I'm
experience.
sorry,
and
who
I think
said
it's
it
insulting.
was?
And I think it's insulting to say that any black parent with a gay child would be okay with their child reading that book.
You're being absolutely ridiculous and you're putting words in my mouth. That is not what I said.
Wait a minute.
If I am an African-American mother of a young gay man, I don't have a problem with him reading this book.
Always lying to me. Why? You lying so much. Why?
So
I think your point was that a book that
Don't
speaks to a
choose.
certain...
why don't we
Right.
put all of the books with graphic sexual content that are in the libraries behind like a curtain, like a special area. And then if parents want their children to be exposed to graphic sexual content,
Porno
they can
site.
go into the raunchy naughty room, as she shared.
I
and
guarantee
vision-
you, I know you're being
Is that a good idea?
Well, I know you're
the
being
same
facetious
visual.
here, but I guarantee that if you did something like
That shows
the
that
kids
we are,
would
like,
all
very
flock to
That's
the
right.
naughty
They'd
section.
all flock to it.
And also, this is
half
what
of
has
the books the
happened,
kids
has it?
never even knew about.
now you
Only
have...
a third of children in American
wait, hold
public
on.
schools can read on grade level. They can't read.
Yeah, what's the problem, Tiffany? They can't read them anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, I find this not a laughing matter. They're laughing about, well, if you say these books are bad, all the kids are going to read it. You don't understand the point. The point is, kids might read this book as if it's a normal thing. A lot of men go to prison. Was that a traumatic experience? Or was it just an experience? If you want to normalize that, I already have an issue with you. But if you tell that to my kid, I would be like, man, there's so many other books that you could have used without that graphic idea. But still, you went so far as if, hey, this is the new normal. That doesn't prove to me that you just want to teach. It gives me the feeling you're on a mission to reach a different point. And that makes me very suspicious.
Don't get me wrong, makosa kita bong. Put the fire na mi blonde kush hash purple skunk criollo colombici jam jam. Durlo que ta verdetta welcome.